Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Poema podcast. I am James Prescott, your host. It's good to have you all back on the show. Thanks for listening. And today, I have a returning guest. I've lost count now of how many times Jenna has been my guest. It's normally about talking about Taylor Swift, although we did one episode on the Marvels as well, which people hopefully will remember. And there will be more in future on Taylor Swift and movies. Uh,
Mhm.
but today we are talking about a mutual love of ours, Doctor Who. We're talking about the most recent series, which is season 2 of the new Doctor Who. I don't know what actual season it is of Doctor Who. There's been a lot of seasons of Doctor Who, but it's season 2 of the new Doctor Who with Ncuti Gatwa as the Doctor, and we're going to be talking about story arcs, character arcs, themes of this series, and it's very, very interesting.
Mhm.
So I am really excited to talk about this. And welcome, Jenna.
Thank you. It's so good to be here.
Yeah, it's always good to have you on this show. I love our conversations. So, and I love talking about Doctor Who, especially. I haven't talked about Doctor Who for a while, so I need to scratch that itch. And I love talking about Doctor Who. It's frustrating at the moment because we don't know what's happening with the show, and we'll get to that later on. But so it's good to revisit this series. So, okay, just to start, what in terms of the broad arch of the series, what were the kind of key themes that you noticed over the series?
Yeah. I love how, especially with this Doctor with 15, Russell T Davis, of course, is back in the saddle for
Uh-huh.
this series and the last, and the specials right before that. He was my favorite of the showrunners, because my real core era of like my doctors were like the ninth Doctor when the revitalization came back in 2005, and then through the 10th Doctor is my very favorite.
Mm-hmm.
And
Same.
then he had a lot of series and things like that, little specials and things that came after that. So I think that was 2005 to 2010, if I'm
Yes.
correct.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I actually did not start watching Doctor Who until after uh, Stephen Moffat's run. It was the 11th and 12th Doctors. And so it was the 11th Doctor had the Day of the Doctor. They're about to introduce the 12th Doctor in that one, the 50th anniversary of Doctor Who. And
Mm-hmm.
so that was around the era that I started watching regularly, as opposed to just like binging it on Netflix that had already been out for a long time. So I'm very, very happy to see Russell T Davies back in this with his themes of emotion. Like there's so much emotion and joy. It's not about necessarily the grandiosity of the years or the scale of the universe, but more in the depth of emotion that is provided. And
Mm.
it's deep, deep grief, as we often talk about on this podcast, that centers a lot around experiences of grief, but then also experiences of joy. And that's why we do a lot of these pop culture episodes and fandom and things, is because we are
Yeah.
finding these are so balanced in the scale of
Mm.
life. In order to have that deep, lasting joy, we also have the depths of grief to, have both in
Mm.
equal quantity. Because, like Brene Brown says, if you're trying to silence these negative emotions, or like grief, we would, say sadness, or whatever, as you're trying to numb those out, then you're not also experiencing the other emotions on the other side too. So I think just being able to feel the feelings and have that be a healthy experience, is something we see modeled really well in this. Of course, with all of
Yeah.
the extravagant things, we've got these robot overlords, and we've got the gods and the pantheon and everything. And so there's a lot of just somewhat cheesy, like that's our favorite part of Doctor Who, is it being really cheesy, like the
Absolutely.
extravagant and
That's part of the
sci-fi
magic
is
of the
always
show.
crazy.
It really is. Like I've always
Yeah,
said that.
that's a heart of the show.
The kind of stuff but the kind of it almost looks like it's homemade. The kind of the authenticity stuff. It doesn't. It's not too slick. Like Doctor Who's not meant to be too slick. It's meant to be a bit corny. It's meant to be a bit,
Yeah,
like homemade in a sense. And you can
extreme.
do that. You can still do that with CGI. You can still
Mhm.
make it look like that with CGI. You have to be clever about it. But yeah, like you're right about like the Doctor. Like, and I've watched Doctor Who since the '80s, and it's always been about like those two things, like joy and grief. Grief is inexorably tied to the Doctor, like their story. I mean, the regenerations, losing so many companions for different reasons in different ways, like losing, yeah, and things coming to an end, like, and yet also there's these big moments of joy. And this season, I think, I mean, like, I don't want to jump right to the end of the season, but the last scene is kind of like those two things together.
Yeah, wrapping up.
You know, like there's joy, but there's also grief because we're losing a doctor, right? And he knows that he's regenerating as well. So he's grieving his own regeneration. That's some part of the doctor's story. But yet he's still got joy. Like, and that is such a powerful example. You know, because I've always said like joy and grief often go together. Joy is not happiness. You know, joy is something that's a lot deeper than happiness, and you can have joy even in the midst of grief. And
Yeah.
I think we see that in this series.
Hmm. And something that I've always loved about Doctor Who, and this has made it, a key part of my story, is that it's such deep friendship love. So you might have some
Mm,
romantic love somewhere along the way, but like the real center of the show is
mm,
not just the joy and the grief and all that, but part of that, what makes those happen is the depth of love. And most of the time, that is a platonic love. And I really appreciate that because it's so rare to see that as the framing
mm.
element and the soul of a show.
Yeah. Yeah, there's like an element of found family in a sense in Doctor Who
Yes.
because all the time
Hmm.
because the Doctor is always finding new companions, and a lot of those relationships are very close and very intimate. And I'm talking about in a platonic way, in a friend, very rare that you get the romantic stuff. And actually, I kind of prefer not to have the romantic stuff with the Doctor. Like honestly, unless it's like organic, which it felt like it was a little bit with Jodie's Doctor and uh,
Yes. Yeah.
remind me
Yes.
of the name. I've forgotten the name.
Yeah.
Um, you know who I mean. I mean that was in fan fiction for a long time actually, because it was so obvious because people could just tell the chemistry, the natural chemistry, on screen between. Oh my god, I can't remember her name. Between the Doctor and
Yasmin. Yeah.
yes, that's
Yasmin.
it. Yes, that's it. I was there. I was almost there. The Doctor and yes, that chemistry was there right from the start. But that was something that wasn't planned. It just evolved because Jodie and the actor that plays Yaz have a very close friendship. So,
Mhm.
but that was kind of beautiful the way they handled that. It wasn't done. It was done more tastefully, I think. Like it wasn't kind of like built into the whole story, and like trying to hype up fans to with some kind of expectation or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it's been done previously. Not that that was bad, but I preferred how Yaz and the Doctor was handled. It was organic. It was a natural thing. It wasn't forced. You
Mhm.
know, not that the Doctor and Rose was forced either. I just there was a natural chemistry, but yeah, but yeah. I mean, Jodie had called her companions her fam, didn't she? So you know, it's very. I mean, I love that part of the Doctor's story because the Doctor's always so alone, but yet they still continue to find new family all over the
Yeah.
world.
Well, and having, Ruby be a straight person who's an ally in the sense of like she really genuinely has like queer friends already, and then 15 is just so gay. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
Trudy got one. Like, you're
very
gonna
much
be
so.
it's so gay,
Yeah,
and Russell, and
absolutely.
he's
Yes.
coming back and doing it his way. So I'm so grateful for the queer representation in this show. It's not just like, oh, they're found family or friends, and that's a very queer theme, and I think that's an underrated queer theme in the rest of media in the world. But also having it be like he genuinely is like really attracted, that romantic attraction to Rogue, and has
Yeah,
the
and
romance,
that was
and there's a
beautiful. I
capacity for that.
love that. Like,
Right, yeah, they're not keeping him, yeah, like, oh well,
yeah, there was no
he's can't
holding back. I
be.
loved the episode with Rogue because
We can have
part
depth.
of it was because it
Yeah,
was so openly queer. And
right. Yes, yeah.
and they didn't try and hide away from it, or there was no shame. They didn't try and be discreet about it. You know,
Mhm.
it was, and yeah, that was beautiful. That was really beautiful. And you know, I'm sad we didn't really get to see more of Rogue, to be honest.
Me too. Yeah.
But that was a beautiful episode. Yeah, and that's Russell T Davies is really good at that. Really good at representation. And
And it's not
yeah,
in competition with his love for Ruby or for Belinda later,
no,
but like it enhances it even. Like Ruby helping him through his grief and saying it's okay to feel things, and Belinda bringing a new dimension of joy into his life and understanding. So and even with the caretaker at the Time Hotel, that she kind of like opens the door and she is like, okay, yeah, like no, he's super gay. And she's like, that's fine, moving
yeah,
on. She's like, okay, that's not for me. So,
yeah, exactly. It's yeah, and you don't see that representation in every show.
yeah, yeah.
And
And
it's so
then multiple kinds of love. Yeah.
exactly, yeah. There's so many different kinds of love, and Chuti was such a wonderful doctor.
Yeah.
he was so full of joy. So even in the mid, but he combined that with amazing acting when like in the episode where they go back to uh, oh god, midnight. When they go back to midnight,
Yes.
um, his acting in that episode is incredible, and there's
Yes.
so much depth there, and so much emotion, and so much like pain that he's carrying in that episode, and he combines that with this kind of joy as well, like and love for everyone. This doctor is, I mean, the doctor loves everyone, but this, I think, like Chuti was very expressive of that, like in his in his physicality and like his body language. He was, and how he spoke. He was very, and I love that. I love that. But like that kind of ability to blend that with this kind of holding very deep and dark emotions as well, uh,
Yes, absolutely.
what makes him a good doctor. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I fully agree. It's so refreshing to have an actor that, I loved his role in Sex Education. I think he did a
Yeah.
great job
Yeah.
with that.
100%.
And
Yeah.
so he wasn't completely unknown, but to have an actor be able to come in and embody it so fully that it's not just like, they never cast a doctor for their fame, like to get attention to it.
Right.
It's because of their role, and I love that about 10 as well, of the depth that you can have this face that all you need is the face of to see the intense terror and fear and the tears just as they're controlled coming down because the doctor holds so much grief in his
And
expression
I'm actually thinking
and bouncing
of
around
Midnight.
to the physicality of jumping around.
I'm actually thinking of the episode with David Tennant in Midnight.
Yes.
That's
Yeah,
that.
and
You know
Safe
the shot
Retreat.
I'm thinking of, right? When he's just sitting
Yeah.
there, kneeling on the ground, and it's just his face, and he's crying, and he's full of fear and like grief and sadness and like everything, and there's no dialogue. It's just him, and yeah, I mean, I love David Tennant as an actor, not just as the Doctor. So yeah, I mean, and yeah, and Ncuti was able to do the same kind of thing.
Mhm.
You could just look at his face and like he communicated without saying anything, and that's powerful. Yeah, and yeah, the look on his face when he realizes that it's midnight that he's gone back to is because they just have. I think they have the camera on his face a lot of the time, and he doesn't say a word, but he's listening to what they're saying. Obviously, we're hearing it, and
Mhm.
you can see his face change, and it's brilliant.
Yeah. And I think it's really cool to have like what do you do with that? Like as a casting director, how are you as a writer, how are you putting somebody to foil against that to balance that out? And you can have the actor like Millie with Ruby, or I think Rose sometimes in this way, or there's the Amy's, the ones who's like, I'm along for the ride. Like this is amazing. Like this is so cool. And it like helps remind the doctor like what you do is actually awe-inspiring. And this is actually an incredible journey that you've taken me on. But it's also nice to have the other side that sometimes follows that of the Donna or Belinda who's like, you're dangerous. And I can see in you that you're bouncing around and covering up deep grief. And actually, like, you need to be held in check sometimes and balance your power out. So I think that's really important to have both kinds of companions of the one that can kind of be like, this is so much joy. Like, get out, but get back out there and experience life and joy. And I think Clara did that a little bit with 11 and, having some sort of um, perspective of the human saying, oh my God, this is so cool, is like, oh, it's not just all pain. It's not just all trauma. But then also having the other side too of being like, whoa,
Yeah,
you're trying to be all happy and like charming and charismatic, and I'm
yeah.
not falling for it, and I need to go home and I have a real life to attend to. So,
And I remember when Amy left the show, her final letter. There's something I
mhm.
remember about the letter is that I can't remember the exact wording, but something as if to essentially say you shouldn't be alone.
Yeah.
You shouldn't travel alone because I worry about you if you're alone. And although she didn't know this, obviously because it's before she met the doctor, but when he was alone before he regenerated, the last year of Tennant's doctor, like when he's alone for too long and he's left unchecked,
Mhm. Yes.
he can go off the rails. That's the Time Lord victorious, uh, and again, I mean, ironically, it's another human being that calls him out on that in that episode, which is
Mhm.
that's such a great scene. Because it's brilliant from David Tennant, like the way that he shifts as soon as he realizes what he's done.
Mhm.
Uh, and I can't remember. I think it's David Tennant who says this in an earlier episode. Actually, I think he says it to. I can't remember which companion he says it to. He says, "Sometimes I need someone."
Yeah.
And I can't remember. I think it's uh, Jones, Martha Jones. He says that too, because she's that companion that there's like, yeah, this
Yes.
is a bit crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, she's like, "I'm a doctor," and so that was another continuation with, Belinda and Martha too of, having this, like, "Yeah, I'm gonna be a doctor too if I ever pass my exams," or Belinda being like, "Yeah, doctors are so arrogant," or whatever, like, and so it's like having the confidence to come up against him and be like, "Yeah, I know all about doctors," like, even before they know what the doctor means, like, they just hear the word doctor and they're like,
Mhm.
"That doesn't impress me, like, I'm here too." It's like,
I
"I know
prefer,
things you don't."
yeah, I
So,
prefer companions who are like that with the
yeah.
Doctor and don't just kind of buy all his kind of TARDIS. Yeah, let's
Yeah.
go travel everywhere. Look at I'm a Time Lord. Isn't this
Sorry.
wonderful? Right? And that's the
Yeah.
kind of that's cool, but
Yeah.
it doesn't last very long. Like that's the kind of romance phase of a relationship. Whether whatever kind of relationship it is, whether it's a romantic one or a platonic one, it's kind of the everything's new, everything's great, and then this reality kicks in. And that's why I mean, Clara gets a lot of hate from the fans. I loved Clara as a companion because she was the Doctor's equal on a lot of occasions, right?
Yeah.
And she didn't just buy into everything that he said, but she really cared about him, uh, and and yeah, I mean, I always thought she was a great companion, and uh, she was the most the Doctor's equal of any companion, I think. Uh, right from the beginning, and
Yeah.
she had two very good doctors. Uh, I would have liked to have seen her with David Tennant. It would have been very interesting, that one.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? But anyway, yeah, no, you're right. And we've had some. I mean, I've loved both companions we've had so far in
Yeah.
since the restart. But we're going to have another new companion again because we're going to have a new Doctor.
Mhm.
Who that Doctor is, we don't know yet, or when that Doctor will appear, we don't know yet. But
Yeah, it's very
yeah,
interesting. Yeah, because so just spoiler alert for the end of the season. I'm assuming if you're listening to this podcast, you've already watched the season. You've had time. It's September at the time we're recording this. It'll probably be later than that when it comes out. Um, but you've had time. Billie Piper shows up. She had played Rose Tyler, if you're unfamiliar, and she's been a frequent, recurring, haunting the narrative throughout this whole thing of playing different
yeah,
the moment and also as part of her run with Rose, she became kind of the face of the heart of the TARDIS in a way. So there's a series of like, well, the moment was kind of self-contained in the Day of the Doctor. That was kind of a unique thing
mhm,
that she showed up in that face. So I don't really think it's the moment. And it's like, but it's not Rose because she's already got her happy ending somewhere else. And then could it be that she's come back and regenerated the same way that David Tennant's face came back to solve some unresolved plot holes or like unresolved tension and storylines that Russell T Davies didn't get the chance to? Or is it that she's the face of the heart of the TARDIS and it's not really the Doctor? Because at the end of the series, they usually they say introducing so and so as the Doctor. But
Yeah,
this just said Billie Piper. It didn't say
yeah,
introducing as the Doctor. But
exactly.
she's in 15's clothes, which is the typical, like, when you're regenerating, it's the big light,
Yeah,
and then you see the new face come up. And then that
yeah,
doctor, the new doctor, is in the previous doctor's outfit. And she is. So it'll be really interesting to see where they go with that. I trust Russell with that. Billy has always said she would come back if it was the right thing. And so everybody said, "Oh, come back, come back, come back," and she's forever been, teasing it and all sorts of things. But
yeah,
said she would wanted to wait till the exact right time because it was,
yeah.
such a core part of who she is and her identity. And she's been reclaiming some of that with, she was in Wednesday, the Netflix series, and had a song come out with Catherine Zeta-Jones, and it's actually been on the charts and on Spotify. This Bad Moon Rising has been
Really cool.
and having Billie Piper come back and sing a song that is now being on, like a mainstream playlist is just so incredible because that was a really traumatic thing for her and she didn't want to do that. And so now to have her come back to Doctor Who, it does feel like this beloved actress who is such a core heart of who knew who is the 2005 on that it just does come like full circle for us. But then we're not going to get anything new for a while on that. In the meantime, we've got Kate Lethbridge Stewart with her new
Mhm.
series, The War Between the Land and the Sea. And so a very different kind of female character taking the lead there. And of course, Shirley, and she has several other,
Yeah.
working under her we all love, Mel from the classic Doctor Who series. So we've got a long time to go. And we've
Mel
got
was a companion when I started watching it, pretty much. Like,
really with the Brigadier.
I think I started watching it. Peter Davidson was my first Doctor I started watching, so it was just after I started watching.
Yeah.
She was one of the first companions that I saw when I was watching
Oh,
Doctor Who. I was like 10
Mel.
years
Yeah.
old when she was a companion.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was really cool when she came back. I was so happy
Oh, I love
because
Mel.
it's like a companion that I'd grown up with, and I always liked her as well. So, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that show's going to be great. I'm looking forward to that show. Yeah, and you're right, Billy Piper. Like I actually think she'd be a really good doctor. Like, just
Oh,
if she
yeah.
was the doctor for the next 3 or 4 seasons, I think she'd be really good.
Yes.
She's a really good actress. She loves the show. She's a bit more mature now, like in terms of her career and her life experience and stuff. It's 20 years since she was Rose Tyler, so
Mhm.
it's not a. This isn't like she's coming back as the Doctor 2 or 3 years after she left
Mhm.
the show. So
Right.
there's plenty of precedent for people who've been in the show before coming back and being either companions or being the Doctor even. And Peter Capaldi, right? He was in a David Tennant episode,
Mhm.
and he ended up being, well, one of my favorite Doctors.
Yeah.
And I
Well,
even
then
used that as a story device, that he chose that face because of it reminded him who it was,
saving.
and that was brilliant. By the way, brilliant. It was retconning, but it was brilliant retconning. Like, and because it makes a lot of sense. Like, the Doctor chooses his faces or her faces, depending, because the Doctor can be either gender.
Can influence it. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, so I'd be
Yeah.
up for that if they did that. And whatever they do, like you say, Russell T Davies is a really good writer. He loves Doctor Who. I trust
Yeah.
him to do it properly, to handle it
Yeah.
properly. And whatever they
Well,
do,
and
I'm sure will be good.
we've had that really cool link, I think, with companions. So Eve Miles had played a character before in 2005 Doctor Who, and then was in the spin-off Torchwood. And
Yes,
so having her be the descendant of that woman from
yeah,
Wales, and now
they
she's
did.
in,
They did
in
that,
Wales
didn't they?
as a modern day person, and saying that Belinda is the opposite of that. This actress had played a character in far in the future, and the doctor's like, I've seen your face before. Like, I've met your descendant in the
Yeah.
future, and you're the ancestor this time. And so I think that's kind of fun when they bring back the actors, or like Martha Jones had a cousin that was at Torchwood. And so she had been just cast as an
Yes, that's
extra.
right. Yeah,
And then,
I love it when they do that. That's really cool. And actually, I don't think Wilf wasn't originally I think when he first appeared in the show, he wasn't mentioned as a relative of Donna.
Right. Yeah, he was just a
They,
guy that ran a newsstand.
guy on the street, but they kind of again they kind of changed
They
it so
made
that he
him a
was her
character.
grandfather, and again it worked. It really worked, and he
It
was
ties
a
in,
really
yeah.
important character in the end. Like he was essentially a companion in that last two-part David Tennant episode where he regenerated. He was basically the companion, and he was brilliant. And he's gone now, and he hopefully he rests in peace and stuff. And it was lovely to see him before he passed as well in one of the Tennant episodes. In the reboot, and but yeah, like that happened. That's happened a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
like Amy Pond, Karen Gillan was in the same episode of Peter Capaldi,
Yes.
actually,
Yes.
and then she ended up being the companion. So
Yeah.
all these things. Little, I love that. That's a Doctor Who thing that just happens a lot, and there's history of it. So
Yeah. Well, and
uh,
the glory of the time travel show, not just being in bringing back other actors that we already know we like and saying that they're related or whatever,
mhm,
but also the themes. And so, like repeating the planet Midnight, if we're coming back to this planet and this entity has evolved and has different capabilities now,
mhm,
and then the references to the Satan pit of standing over the pit and looking down, and so there's all these callbacks, whether they are literal like an actual location or whether it is just fan service of calling back to those things. But it's funny to watch that we had in 2005. One of the favorite things there was the reality shows that was really big in the real world in 2005, to have these Big Brother and the Face
yeah,
Off, like all these British television shows that were on
yes,
at the time being referenced, Weakest Link, and then now to have that be the song contest, the Interstellar Song
yes.
Contest at Eurovision. It's
I
a
love
huge
that so
phenomenon.
much.
So
Because
we
it's
all
basically
got
like
the
Eurovision,
reference.
wasn't it? It's like a kind of take on Eurovision.
Yeah.
And Eurovision, by the way, for my American listeners, it's this European Song Contest. Every country in Europe,
Very silly.
plus a couple of countries that aren't actually in Europe, enter a song every
Yeah.
year, and everyone performs them. And the whole idea is to be a bit kind of campy.
Yes.
It's a very queer competition in a beautiful way. And so you put on this big performance, and then every country votes, and people from every country vote, and it's this amazing, wonderful thing. Like ABBA made their name by winning the Eurovision Song Contest, and quite a few famous people have actually competed in it as well. I can't
Oh,
remember
yes.
all of them, but like ABBA are the most famous one because everyone knows who ABBA are now, right? So but that's how they started, and so that's what that was about in reference to, and it was the same kind of format as the Eurovision Song Contest, which I just loved. So yeah, yeah. So that's that. But I thought that was a wonderful episode. I thought that was a really
Yes.
wonderful episode.
I love Dug-a-Doo. I thought it was the cutest thing. I love that Murray Gold made it up and that Russell had nothing to do with it and that he disavows it as having anything to do with him. But I think it is hilarious. I love that we fan pressured them into releasing the full song. It is so cute. But I especially love that that is so realistic. Of that literally would be a Eurovision song. Like
Yeah,
and the
good.
main
Yeah,
girl, yeah, St. Clair singing "My Big Feet" is like, oh, I fell in love, but I tripped over my big feet. It's like that does sound like something that would happen at Eurovision.
yeah,
But then also something that happens at Eurovision is the call for unity and the call for understanding and for
mm,
inclusion. And so in this end of this episode, she's singing about the oppression that her home planet went through before it was destroyed for
mm,
capitalism. That the sponsors of the show, of this Eurovision or this Interstellar Song Contest, had exploited her planet. And you have the theme of revenge that runs throughout the series, but then you also have this beautiful redemption of her singing this really moving, meaningful ballad that actually brings awareness to
yeah.
a global phenomenon. And it just reminded me of the song from Ukraine, not that long
Yes,
ago in the Eurovision
I
Song
was
Contest.
thinking of that actually. Yeah,
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 and it like brings that in. So it feels real, even though you're talking about aliens and these silly little things, and you got Dugadoo, and you got like a cartoon that comes alive and things. There's also some very, very real emotions and tie-ins and lessons for us to throughout
yeah.
this.
And it's a story that's been in the news as well. Like
Yes.
with lots of countries saying they're going to pull out of Eurovision next
Oh,
year
yeah.
if Israel are competing, which I think is incredible, really. So it's either quite a political thing, you know. I mean, the UK never do well in it because everyone hates us.
Aw.
Like Europeans hate us. They don't. It's fine. We're not very nice to them generally, to be honest. A lot
Yes.
of our not we're not as not yeah. I mean, there are obviously exceptions. I'm not saying everyone's like that, but there's a lot of Britons who don't like Europe, you know, and think Europe is bad and don't like the spirit of unity and all of that, which is a shame because I love it and I love Eurovision. That's why I watch Eurovision because it's everyone coming together, you know, and it's something bigger than all of us. And the movement is all about love and unity and peace and everything. So it's wonderful. And I'm glad that they brought that into Doctor Who because you know, like you say, and the way they handled it was so good. Uh, One of the things that I know you mentioned in relation to this season in terms of themes was power and fear, and I agree with you with that. I think that's a big; those two are big running themes through the season. Is it just like, can you expand on that a little bit for people who are listening?
Yeah, and I think that that is definitely something that relates to what we're seeing right now. So, of course, we have fear in Midnight with the planet that is known as Midnight. Um, of course, that's the whole point is that everybody is so afraid that they end up start killing each other. And so we end up landing on this planet where there's one alive person and there's all these bodies that have been murdered
Mhm.
because they are afraid. And that's how it works with this thing. Is it just for the joy of it? You know, there's really no reason. But then you also have the fear that drives Kid the Hellion to revenge in that Interstellar Song Contest episode of he wants to use this delta wave and kill a trillion people like as revenge for what happened to his planet, and all of this is driven by this fear and this hate. So it goes from a genuine hurt and trauma into then projecting that at a much larger volume, like a megaphone really. We see that with Conrad. Of Conrad was terrified of his parents that were so abusive, especially his mom. We see and has this fear of being irrelevant and has this desire to show that he's the boss, that he really knows what's going on, that he's smarter than everybody else. And so that's, you know, we see this over and over, and it's sadly so relatable because it gets turned into hate. And the Rani was not treated well by the Time Lords. And so now she wants to dominate. She wants to create new Time Lords that she can dominate. And it's how we're all going to encounter oppression and trauma and fear and sadness and grief. But how do we respond to that is what makes us Ruby and Kate Stewart and the Doctor and Belinda versus Conrad and the Ronnie and Abby. So we got the episode with the barber. It's a really cool episode where if you tell a story, it's projected on the wall as their
Mhm.
your hair, but it's driving this engine. The stories are powering
Mhm.
this god's engine or this demigod or whatever he is.
Yeah.
But he's wanting revenge on the story gods, and Abby wants revenge, particularly on the doctor, but specifically on her father too. And it's just so sad to see how they're trying to claim any power they can get, whether it's
Mm.
Kid or Conrad or Abby. Like they've had a genuine injustice done to them, horrible thing. Like they deserve to feel this grief for sure.
Mm.
But then you take that and twist it in these selfish ways or egotistical ways or revengeful ways, and you end up with violence begetting violence
Mm.
and innocent people dying to make a point.
Mm.
Um, so it's just really really sad to see that. But I think especially the Conrad storyline of
Oh, yeah.
discrediting Unit as not true, which is real weird if you're not reading it from a trauma informed perspective. You're like, but he meets the doctor as a little kid. Why would he want to discredit Unit and say the doctor's fake or that they're all lying because he knows it's real? But
Mm.
it's if you look at it from a trauma response way, he's uncovering the protector before they can fool him.
Mhm.
And so you want to like a bullied kid will walk around being self-deprecating and talking horrible things about themselves with no self-compassion because they want to do it first. Because they want to say I have power over you and becoming a bully to others. Um, his trauma is at work there in this arc of deception, pretending to be kind and loving in order to gain power over Ruby and Unit and the Doctor in lieu of ever being able to get revenge on his parents, because he sees these as, especially Unit, as a parental thing, as a unifier. And same thing with Ronnie, of
Mhm.
hate and irrelevancy is driving her fear, and then revenge against the original Time Lords so she can rule a new Gallifrey. Lux is, the god of light, invoking fear to get his way. He's using it as a control tactic. And Abby, same thing, of like they're trapping people in their narrative, and Kid of hurt people hurting people, and it just reinforces the stereotypes against him, of that they're seen as a violent race, and so he's just doing what people expect of him in this never-ending cycle. So hate is really blinding these characters. Fear is killing. Cycles of oppression and violence don't end in liberation for anyone, whether in these storylines or in our own world.
Yeah, absolutely. The way, yeah, exactly. And I've seen this in other great stories as well, where like the way to end oppression and violence is not to oppress the oppressor and to turn it on them, because you're just repeating the cycle. You're just
Mhm.
continuing oppression and violence. It's just against somebody else. And we see this in the Hunger Games as
Mhm.
well. At the end of the final movie, where she realizes that the kind of rebellion that have been trying to topple the corrupt people in power are just going to be exactly the same.
Yeah.
They're going to do their own Hunger Games. They're going to do their own ways of oppressing people, and that's not what she fought for. And she brings that down. That's a. But you're right. The way to, like, we often get caught up in our anger so much that we end up causing harm to people uh, that harmed us, which isn't a healthy thing to do. It's like revenge doesn't actually satisfy in the end, and it can lead to unhealthy expressions of power, like you're talking about. And there's loads of examples of that in fiction and in the real world. And yeah, I mean that's kind of what's happening with Irani. It's she's you know she's uh, she wants revenge, and she
Right.
wants to do to people what they've done to her, essentially. And obviously, it doesn't work in the end.
Yeah. Well, and I was glad that they brought in the real life example too. So the Ronnie just feels like such a large scale of like, and people are upset 'cause they were like, oh, it just comes off like a female version of the Master when she was just a scientist. But it's like, oh, but she's acting specifically in this arc out of that trauma and that desire for revenge and seeking. But I really like that we start this whole season with a very simple, very clear, on the nose representation of this with Alan Budd. So Belinda has
Mm,
this high school boyfriend, or they seem very young at least, who buys her this star certificate, and he just thinks he is the coolest thing ever, and he corrects her all the time. He's just really patriarchal in his views of women, but then he grows up to kind of be the same. Of that, like he gets abducted by these aliens who, think that, oh, like you named the star after her, like you must actually be the ruler of our planet. Because she tells them, like, it's not my fault, it's him. Go find this guy. Don't abduct me, abduct him. Well, now we got both of them because Al is now in charge. So it's not an AI as we think throughout most of the episode.
mhm,
It's AL, Alan, Al. Um, and so he is just like Belinda calls it, the planet of the incel, because it's his trying to seek revenge on her and force her into loving him by exerting power over her
mhm,
and revenge for her breaking up with him. Um, and that's just so on the nose, it doesn't even feel realistic because he was so long ago. They broke up a long time ago, in her and Belinda's timeline. And so it feels like such an extreme. Then you see Conrad, and he is the perfect boyfriend. So Ruby has been through a lot of PTSD. She's
mhm.
really struggling. She needs somebody who can get it and understand where she's coming from and love the things she loves and
Yeah.
move forward into a new chapter and a new life without the Doctor. And Conrad is the perfect boyfriend for that because he's interested. He has this podcast. Like, it genuinely seems like he is the perfect match for her. And this is a beautiful romantic story about her finally finding a place to fit in on Earth. Well, of course, it ends up that he's just punking her the whole time, and he says it's such a drag to be with her, and like it's he was faking everything, and so she's left shocked and gaslit and traumatized again by him, and is able to grow as a character in such a way that by the end she's like, honestly, like you could have made the incel world. You could have made the robots are taking over everything and subjugating the humans and I'm in control and like that was not his wish. He wasn't Alan. That the doctor told him of like you're nothing and also that people just want to be safe and fed and have a roof over their heads and he cares and he gives it to them because he's acting out of not an incel mentality but out of an abused kid mentality and really working in this way of there's a very popular person who is now being grieved as a martyr after he was killed, who this is clearly based on in the real world. um, and Conrad just fully lives into that patriarchy. We've used a term here before, if you've been a long time listener, a mononormativity, of that everyone's central goal in life is to have a heterosexual, reproductive, romantic partnership. And that is your whole goal as a human being in order to be a realized human being. And you see in Wish World that Conrad has built this world that is oppressive. It is silencing people and you can't doubt, you can't wonder, you can't think outside the box, like no creativity. Everyone has to do exactly their job to do, with the exception of disabled people who he doesn't even see, like he's just erased them so thoroughly and that he can't even imagine a trans girl. And so Donna's daughter Rose is not even in this and so until later. But she says it like you could have imagined a world of guns and whiskey and subjugation and all these things, but instead he like wants everyone to be happy because he has that view of himself that he really is a good guy. He thinks he really is benevolent and he really thinks he's like exposing these lies or whatever. um so I
Mm.
respect that, but like also I'm very grateful that she refuses to taken in by him again. She refuses to give him more grace than his due. And then by the end, she is so upset that like this child, Poppy, has blinked out of existence, but Conrad gets survived. Like out of all the things that were
Yeah.
survived into the end, he gets this life of happiness and he gets this life of no consequences besides just being a nobody. And so I do feel for her that she's feels like it wasn't really like justice done, but then also she's like, I'm gonna get you to start over and like you could actually be a good person if you hadn't fallen into this trap of patriarchy and conservatism and this,
Mm.
this really, really twisted view of reality. So
And then
what I
that's what
mentioned.
ultimately leads to the doctor
Mhm.
sacrificing themselves to save this baby. And, it's unexpected. You don't see it coming. But there's also this kind of, I don't know, I have this sixth sense for when something bad's about to happen with the doctor. Like you can, and yeah, regenerations are always sad. Uh, and even, there's joy in the sense of that this baby now gets to have their life, which is a beautiful thing.
Mhm.
But the cost of that is that we lose this doctor who is so loving and joyful and kind and, uh, and but I guess that's the character of the doctor. He
Yeah.
wouldn't be the doctor if he didn't make that sacrifice, in a sense, right? So there's that paradox. Uh, and yeah, there's always, well, it's kind of that example of when you give in to power and fear and you cause harm in that way. There's always people that suffer. You can't just make it all okay without consequences. And the consequence in this is that the doctor has to sacrifice himself to save a baby, um, and and he does so. He doesn't complain even about it. He does it.
Yeah.
Like it's like, yeah, of course I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
Of course I am. Like there's nothing else I could do. Uh, and and his last words are joy. Is it joy to the world? I think
Yeah,
his last words are like,
it has been a joy. Yeah.
yeah. And that's really beautiful. I got quite emotional watching it, and
Mhm.
even though I could kind of guess it was coming. Uh, but yeah, it's like this is where that path goes, where you give in when you give into fear and hatred and division and revenge. It
Mhm.
doesn't go anywhere good. It goes into death. It can go into sacrifice. It can go into grief. And that's where it does go. You know.
Yeah. And we see that foreshadowed by, the planet that ends up being Midnight. The commander has to sacrifice herself. That she says, I know the entity is attached to me. And so if I run and throw myself into this pit, then the entity will be trapped down there too. And that kind of
I did.
ends up not
Yeah.
being the case in the very, very end. But, we see self sacrifice not just with the doctor in the end, but throughout,
Oh yeah.
as the caretaker of the movie theater is saying, I'll keep myself in here and keep this deity occupied, and then he won't go bother anyone else. He won't go sacrifice or
Yeah,
kill
and
anyone.
again, it's something that we've seen throughout Doctor Who as well. And one of the things I loved about David Tennant's Doctor is how he always was so traumatized by all these people that he cared about, kept sacrificing themselves for him, and he didn't like it at all. Like the Titanic episode, for
Yeah.
example, there's quite a few people who sacrifice themselves, and you can see the effect it has on him. He just can't deal with it. He can't. And actually, that's what happens towards the end. That's what impacts him right at the end when he's like, you know, again we talked about Wilf. Wilf is going to sacrifice himself,
Hmm.
and the Doctor's like, no, no, you're not. Not this time. I'm not losing anyone else. Like I would rather die than lose someone else. Like that's kind of it. I'm getting emotional talking about it, but that's the part of the journey of the Doctor. It's always about grief and losing people that you love and sacrifice, and that's I suppose the Doctor would call it the curse of the Time Lords.
Yeah.
But it's a reoccurring theme in Doctor Who.
Yeah. And I get that there's a lot of dialogue about why they wrote Belinda's ending the way they did. And I think that that is actually why, is that, he's not being killed by a bullet or a Dalek or the big villain of the finale. He wasn't, killed by the Ronnie or whatever. But he's willing to give his life up over and over for the sake of others. And even if it's just one small person that didn't exist in the first place and nobody but Ruby even remembered. And so I think in some ways he's sacrificing himself for Ruby because Ruby has been through so much. She's just constantly traumatized and gaslit. And even to the very end, she's like, I remember this little girl existed. It happened. Even if no one else in the world remembers this happening, I remember trauma, I remember grief, and no one else believes me. And I have no doubt that others had to deal with that, of the other companions. But in 13's run, we see the companions joining up with previous companions that for a support group. And it's like the secret support group of the Doctor's companions. And Martha and Mickey had each other, and Unit and Torchwood and all that. And Donna originally had no memories, but now has a whole family and actual 14 herself. Like she has a doctor in her backyard. And then Rose does too. And in the whole other universe. And Amy and Rory had each other. And Clara and Ishildur with their own target TARDIS. But it's just Ruby. Ruby's just kind of left alone and
Yeah.
over by herself with something awful. And we see that when she has to have the older version of herself that's haunting her in the 40 yards. And we see
Uh,
that in that parallel universe. And we see that here.
mm,
And then, she's left to figure out this whole family situation of, yes, she has a million mothers. And I love that they keep making references to like Kate, like Kate's real, so good to her and such a good mentor and everything. But then Charlie's like, goodness, you're just collecting moms. You leave some for the rest of us. So she does have good Mel and Shirley and friends, female friends. That's really important. But I can see why she would just fall so easily for Conrad and his fake persona. And she just really needs the fresh start and the recovery. And I
mm.
hope, in my imagination, at least, it leads to meeting some of the other companions like Yaz and Ryan and the whole crew. But she's only 20. She's 20 years old and she's had been through so much of this, and having to insist that she has it right, that she actually does remember that things are wrong over and over and over again.
Mm,
I think that's also part of what drives the Doctor to save Poppy and create a different reality for Belinda. Is it's yes, it's Belinda loves Poppy and does very much want to be her mom and remembers having a daughter, and it feels like her daughter has died. But also part of it is that Belinda doesn't remember at all. She has no memory of having a daughter whatsoever, and so this is even kind of offensive that like somebody would suggest she has a daughter she doesn't remember. um but it's Ruby's the one who says like, I'm not crazy, and I have been traumatized and all the rest of you have too, and you just don't remember it. So I think part of it is the Doctor's love for Ruby that drives him to sacrifice himself too.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And yeah, you're right. Because now Ruby knows she's right, and she's not lost somebody else.
Hmm.
Right? She was right about the baby existing, and the baby is now back.
Yeah.
And maybe, hopefully, she gets to play a role in her life. Like, I like to think that she does, like
Yeah.
an auntie. Kind of.
Yeah.
And that's yeah, that's validation in a sense. For her, and also knowing the doctor made that sacrifice for her because he believed her
Hmm.
as well,
Exactly.
and that she wasn't crazy. It just validates the fact that she's not crazy, and that she has value, like, and that the doctor values her and believes her. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a great season. Yeah, I enjoyed the Chi-Chi's Doctor a lot, and I wish I could have seen more of him. Like with Jodie, I wish I could have seen more of Jodie with different
Yes.
writers. I'd love to have seen Russell T Davies write Jodie's Doctor. Like that
Yes.
would have been wonderful. But and we did get to see her. We did get to see her in that last episode. She did arrive. She did come in. So that was nice.
Mhm.
And I just love Jodie anyway. I think she's wonderful.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was great. But hopefully next time we can have a doctor for a bit longer, and we can have some good stories. Whoever it is, whether it's Billy Piper or someone else, uh, you
Well,
know,
and I'm hoping that the spinoff of The War Between the Land and the Sea goes well, financially
yeah,
and the real world, because we do get this teasing in the barbershop episode of The Fugitive Doctor. And that was her story with Abby, that she had been the one that bet on Abby's life and won the bet and then did not take Abby with her. And so we see this glimpse of the fugitive doctor coming back for just a few seconds saying like, honey, I was involved in a whole other story. I was a fugitive. I was running from the law. Like there was a whole amnesia thing happening. Like she says,
yeah,
that was frankly, I was not concerned with you, Abby, at the moment because I had bigger things going on. And maybe that's a story that'll be told someday. And that seems like a huge teaser to me of not necessarily that something is coming because they need the funding for it in the real world, but that in universe, like they are hinting that there is a whole other story to be told there, and that it would be worthy of a mini series at the very least. So I'm really hoping we get at least a movie, if not more, miniseries episodes of the Fugitive Doctor, and that would come to screen. I know that Big Finish has picked up a lot of the slack as far as missing holes and pieces, especially the Eighth Doctor. He has an entire line of stories that we'd never got out of the movie.
yeah.
So
I know it's wonderful.
yeah, I think Big Finish is
Yeah,
doing great work in the comics and the extended universe with the books and things. But I
yeah,
think for the Fugitive Doctor, we really need at least a few more episodes of there's a story that hasn't been told yet coming to
yes,
life. Yeah.
yes, absolutely. That's why you have like these miniseries. You can tell those stories in live action. And that's really interesting to me. So you can even tell the possibilities are endless. You could tell multi-doctor stories without the current doctor. You know, uh, you could tell companion stories. You can tell. There's so many possibilities.
Yeah.
So many interesting characters. Like I'd love. I mean, this won't happen, but I would love to see more of River Song as well, and more of her story outside of her time with the Doctor. because she's got a whole life outside of being with the Doctor. So it'd be interesting to see that, but I doubt we'll get that. But
No, but
I can
the
keep.
Big
I can
Finish
keep.
ones have picked it up really well. The Big Finish people have done a good job with that, with
Yeah,
what
they
they
have.
can.
They've been really good, and it's great to see old Doctors coming back and recording stuff
Yes.
with Big Finish.
Yeah, the
Like
actual
being
actors.
willing to come back and do that, which is it's really cool. And that is really good because even when you haven't got the show, you've got all those stories which are coming out and people can engage with and enjoy
Mhm.
Doctor Who because it's such a big universe,
Yeah.
and it's such a long history now. It's 60 plus years,
Mhm.
So yeah, absolutely. So
Yeah. I feel like before we end, we need to address the criticism of this season.
yes, yes.
So
I
the
think
big criticism.
my I mean yeah no you go on, I've got some thoughts.
Yeah, I feel like we'd be remiss. People are probably sitting there going like, they've been talking for like an hour and they still haven't talked about the thing I hate the most. So there was a lot of criticism at how this season ended for Belinda as the companion. And this is the arc not just of the end of 15 story, but kind of
Yeah.
wrapping up Belinda's story as well. So this is a lot of out of universe stuff, a lot of real world stuff. In a perfect world, it would have been teased the whole time that Belinda had a daughter, that she was hoping to get back for her daughter, and that's the reason she was so ready to get back by 7:30 on May 24th. And that was a meta
Yes.
reference. That was actually the real world day that the first part of the finale premiered. But so that was very funny. But that the whole time it was teased of like she has to get back to go to work, and that's not true. Is that in the end, with this shifted reality, that she's trying to get back to Poppy because her mom has been keeping Poppy overnight.
Mhm.
But that is a shift in reality in the end because they had to write both this companion and doctor out of the show. And so it was not planned that way. Originally, I have not seen this confirmed, that we thought Millie was staying on, and that originally some of this arc of the how the universe was going to go was written for the Ruby Conrad story to kind of be the tie
Mhm.
at the end, and all that whole thing. And then so adding Belinda into that, I think it was a great addition. I think that this actress did a great job. The story writers did a good job, except for you get to the end in the Wish world, and you've got this world where they're hiding the disabled people away, the outlaw mentions of queerness, like, you can't, your wives have to stay at home raising babies. That's what's expected. You have to keep the house. You get hauled away by the police for doubting the narratives you've been fed. It's this dream future that so many conservatives in our day, and particularly evangelicals, think that they are fighting for. So we're seeing this very clearly. So it's very weird for Belinda to run out into the world. She runs out to this like park kind of area and just screams because she realizes she doesn't remember Poppy's birth. She doesn't remember anything about this. This has to be fake. And she's been manipulated into this reality. And
Mhm.
then right after that, she has such an attachment to Poppy that she's in this box for most of her own finale, that she's just hidden away holding a toddler in a completely silent box, which is almost hilarious when they do the cuts to the box, and she's just like standing there holding Poppy. And it's like, she's not the hero of her own story because she's just holding this little girl and not actually fighting the villains. But in a way, that's kind of Russell's point, is that that's what they're fighting for, is a
Mhm.
world of safety and a world of love and a world where this child can grow up, and
Mhm.
Belinda can have this all, like she can have her career. She doesn't have to be this stay-at-home mom, married wife. She's like, I don't think it's fair to say that she's enforcing the conservative ideal. And that's where a lot of the criticism came from, of like, are you kidding me that like in the end making her a mom instead of this strong independent woman? And I was like, but I don't think that those don't have to be in conflict with each other. That
Mhm.
Belinda can be who she is. She can still be herself. She's hardworking as a nurse. She's saving lives every night on the night shift. She's a single mom. She's Indian. She's just as honest and witty as ever. She's got her parents involved in her life, and one of her parents is a world famous musician. And like, so it's really weird. It was a lack of foreshadowing. It should have been all along. It felt very much like they rewrote this episode not only to add another companion after Millie announced Ruby wouldn't be the main companion and she'd only been a few episodes, but also to account for why Belinda couldn't keep traveling with the Doctor. They needed a way to tell Belinda, no, you have to stay home. And in the real world, in the universe, she makes that decision of she's like, it's too dangerous. We can't do this. Even though they were just talking about traveling with Poppy in the TARDIS before they forget she exists. She realizes, yeah, that's actually not realistic, which I agree with, that you really can't have a kid and be part of this lifestyle, but
Mm-hmm.
it gives him a reason to regenerate. And so having to write Belinda's story this way felt very forced, but it was kind of just them doing the way that they did. And
Yeah,
so
and I think
she could have chosen to return to life working in medicine the way Martha did. She could have just walked right out, but they needed something to be that heart wrenching,
and
like,
also I think because Ncuti probably decided to leave after they wrote it, and it was quite late, so
they'd
they
even
had to
shot some scenes. Yeah.
yeah, so they had to write that in pretty late and change things to accommodate that pretty late. That's why Billy was brought in so quickly because there wasn't like a big decision to bring her in, like she's going to be this, that, or the other. It was we haven't got another doctor, but Ncuti needs to regenerate into something. Um, and you can wreck on it later. I mean, like you can do that. You've got good writers, you can do that. And there's things that you can do with Billie Piper that we've already talked about. Roles that she's already played. The Heart of the TARDIS, for example,
Mm-hmm.
that could easily be that because he does go through the Heart of the TARDIS when he's regenerating,
Yeah.
like to help him regenerate. So there's it even works, So yeah, and that's a difficult thing to have to deal with as a writer and showmaker because when your lead character like says, right, I'm leaving the show, probably because they couldn't guarantee there'd be another season next year, and he's got other things he wants to do, and he's a really good actor and in demand, and that makes sense. I don't blame him for doing that at all. Like he can't just sit around and wait, for them to decide to shoot season 3, and I understand that. So. Yeah, and they, with given the situation that they were faced with in the real world, that it wasn't an easy one, and so that's what they did, and this next season hasn't been announced yet. They're not even sure that Disney are going to be involved in it or not yet. They haven't confirmed whether or not they will be. Yeah, so I can understand that decision, and it's a difficult situation for everyone, and yeah, of course it's going to affect the show a little bit, but uh, overall, I think it was still a good season. I really enjoyed the season, and there is genuine grief at the end when the Doctor regenerates, uh, because it's well written, because Russell T Davies is a good writer, and he does that really well. So yeah, you're right, and some of the criticisms are understandable, but there's also reasons for them as well, and reasons those things happened,
Yeah.
which weren't to do with the people making the writers of the show, and
Yeah.
so yeah,
Yeah. Has a lot more to do with time and money than what the actual like desire for the character arc was. So you
exactly,
did
yeah,
really good with it. But it's Disney has not yet made a decision on whether or not they're going to be part of the budget. BBC is committed to continuing Doctor Who, but you can't have a shooting schedule and a cast and contracts renewed unless you have the budget in your hand. And if you don't have the budget yet, it's on a holding pattern indefinitely until there can be a decision made. So this is a hugely in-demand actor. Gatwa has been in Barbie. He's been in some of the biggest films of the year as well.
yeah,
So freeing up his schedule to be able to do all these things that he wants to do, and particularly said it's a very physically demanding role, but it's also a very time intensive role. And of course they have brought it back to shooting in Wales, which was a big deal with Bad Wolf Productions and
uh-huh,
Julie
yeah,
Gardner's. I love that she's involved again, but it is farther away from London and farther away from everything else that's going on in the film world in the UK. So I think that that is a very reasonable decision on his part to say, "Hey, I've got some good years left. I really need to be pursuing LA and UK stuff." And
yeah, and
so
he will be great. I mean, he will be great, and I'm sure that he will come back. Like Doctors come back. It's a tradition of the show, and he clearly loves the show. Uh, and so if time allows, I'm sure they'll be back for anniversary episodes.
Yes.
Got a 70th anniversary episode in 8 years' time.
Yeah, there we go.
I really want. I mean, like the next anniversary, I want them to bring back some old doctors. They
Yeah.
didn't do that for the 60th, which is fine because sometimes because you shouldn't do that just every anniversary, like otherwise it gets stale, right?
Pretty good. Yeah.
And I love what they did with the 60th because David Tennant's my favourite Doctor, and it was good, and it was kind of retconning some old stories
Yes.
and kind of
Bringing up
transitioning
the
between
kids.
the old Doctor and the Who and the new Doctor Who, kind of. But next, in like 8 years' time, then you could bring back Jodie and Matt Smith and Chuti and whoever the Doctor is
Yes.
next, because that Doctor will probably have regenerated by then as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, yeah. So we'll see what happens with that. But Doctor Who will go on. I don't have any doubts about that. Like Doctor Who is off the air for like 16 years
Mhm.
between 89 and 95. The fandom never gave up on it. The magazine kept going. There was fan fiction. There was
Yeah.
stuff that came out. There was novels. There was all that kind of thing. It never stops.
Well,
So even if it's off the air for a year or two, it's going
yeah.
to come back.
There's always the resentment of the Disney involvement with the money and things like that, because and
Mm,
partially with them
yeah.
being a monopoly in the decisions they make as a company. But honestly, the reason I started watching was because it was on Netflix, and the reason it kept going until 2005, from when it ended in the 80s, was because it was on PBS here and BBC there, and
Mm,
the Canadian CBC, and so it was playing on in reruns all the time on public television. And so there are a lot of people of your generation and of slightly older than me who grew up watching it. I remember in high school I had a peer that was really into the Fourth Doctor and did the Fourth Doctor for Halloween with this long scarf and everything. And we're like, what even is that? And it's like, oh, I watched Doctor Who with my parents. They grew up with this and love it. And it's
it's a
such a kid show, but
generational
it is on
show.
PBS.
Like little kids love it. My generation loves it. Your generation loves it.
Yeah,
My dad watched it. It started in 1963. My dad was what 16, and so like he watched it.
sure.
And I watched it, and my niece. I don't know about my niece and nephew yet, but um, I remember watching an episode with my niece, the first Duty episode. I don't know if she's watched any more since, but yeah, it will keep it. It will keep going because generations will grow up watching it, and then they'll want to write Doctor Who,
Yes.
right? So like whoever is the next showrunner and writes it next, I hope it's somebody that. It'd be great if it was somebody that grew up watching the 2005, 2010 Doctor Who and has a vision of how it can be done now. Like just like Russell T Davies grew up watching Doctor Who, and then he's the one that brought it back. Stephen Moffat loved Doctor Who. So there's a tradition of it.
Well, and
So
I love the story. I love the stories of David Tennant as a child running around the backyard and,
yes,
playing Doctor Who and imaginary play as a small child, and then writing Doctor Who fan fiction for his English essays and things.
yeah,
And then, of course, growing up and not only playing one of the most iconic doctors and coming back to play a different doctor, but he met his wife on the show, who was the daughter of one of the doctors that he watched when he was a kid. And so now they've got children who are, one of whom is
oh
going
yes,
to
and
acting.
and his
Yeah,
his son, his adopted son, Ty Tennant,
yes, yeah,
is an actor. So
yes.
I mean, like
Would
you,
get you back.
you wouldn't rule it out, would you? You just
Right,
wouldn't.
right. Yeah.
And
Three generations.
I think he's trans. Is he trans? I can't remember. I think he might be.
No, no, no. There's a younger one that is.
Oh, there's another one. I knew one of his children was. I couldn't remember
Yes,
which
yes,
one.
yes.
Right. Apologies, I didn't know that. Right, but because David Tennant does a lot of allyship, and obviously
Yes.
it's not you shouldn't just do allyship because one of your children is trans, but the amount of allyship he does is incredible. So
Oh, yes. Even before that.
and I love him. But yeah, Ty Tennant, you never know.
Right, yeah. I love the three generations of them, like, watching their dad on TV and being like, "I am confused, this is my dad," and then now they're older, and so they get it, and, they really love it, but it's such a microcosm of the fans that I see. So I go to a convention out here in LAX, the LAX Marriott is, the Gallifrey One convention, and it is
Oh wow.
epic. It has been going on a long time. They're about to wrap it up, but, in the next few years, but they have been doing an incredible job for so long, and it's just such a family atmosphere because it's only Doctor Who. and they have these actors come in, and so you'll just be having a conversation with somebody and realize they wrote your favorite episode, and and you're just
I love
hanging
it when
out
that
with Miss
happens.
Jindal and like having ice cream with the actors who played the classic companions, and so there's a lot of that just feeling like family of people who are now grandparents, and when they were young they were watching Doctor Who and going to this convention, and then bringing now their kids, and then their kids are bringing their kids, and so it's truly a tradition that can last a really long time. And of course there's other fandoms like that. I think Star Trek and Star Wars are also similar in that vein, but
Yeah, I mean they've been going almost as
a
long.
real
Those
big family.
those two. Yeah, it's very similar. Like yeah, like I mean like even Smallville, which is one of my favorite shows.
Mm-hmm.
The fandom with that is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And all the old cast members come out and they go to all the conventions. They kind of all friends with each other, and they even do a cruise now.
Mm-hmm.
Cruiseville it's called, where you get Michael Rosenbaum, who played Lex Luthor, and the guy that played Clark, go on this cruise with Smallville fans,
Oh,
and it's awesome. You know, like
yeah,
so.
fan culture is amazing.
That happens with a lot of with a lot of shows. That happens is there's a family sense of fan of in the fandom, and
Yeah,
they meet at conventions and they meet at and you see the same people and all that, and it's awesome. And that's the best of fandom, I think,
yeah,
when that kind of thing happens. Yeah.
yeah. Well, and I think that we're all just so affected by the main theme of this specific season, but then also the show in general is the power of story. So you get, like, we had the barbershop with the engine that is powered by story, and story is a powerful theme throughout the whole season. You get these villains that have revenge arcs, but Donna or Doctor and Belinda and Rose and Kate and all of these companions and 13 and all of these mentions of these stories that we've mentioned throughout this episode of this podcast is hope, the story of care, the story of faith, the story of truth. All these stories that power the engine, not only of these individual story arcs, but of the show itself, and then of our lives as fans, is finding hope and care and faith and truth through the metaphor of these stories, and how we shape our views of the past and of the present and of the future based on the stories that we carry in our minds and hearts and the way that we share these stories with others.
Absolutely, that's it. That's ultimately what this is about, the power of story. A good story will always grab people. I believe that. And, and like, I see, this is one of my concerns with Marvel, I think, the movies, is that they're not writing the scripts before they make the movie.
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of doing it as they go along. And I don't like that. It's like they're not prioritizing the story because the story is the most important thing. And like with DC, and I can't go through an episode without mentioning Superman, can I? But their policy is like we don't make any movie until we have a script we are happy with, like a good story, and this good story is compelling, and good stories make good movies and make good TV shows. And the Doctor has been lucky to have had some amazing writers over the years, like Russell T Davies, Stephen Moffat, for example, like and there's lots of others as well. I'm not gonna, I couldn't remember every single writer that's written Doctor Who, but we've had some really good writers write on Doctor Who, and you know, I mean, it's a great character to write as well, and and I know that it's a character that will endure. Yeah.
Yeah. And those good stories aren't just making good TV or movies or comic books, they're making good lives.
Yes.
We as fans
Absolutely.
have the responsibility to then take those stories from those pieces of media and then shape our world
Mm,
with the hope and the
absolutely.
love and the care and the faith and everything that they have provided to us.
Absolutely agree. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, good stories are a metaphor for life because life is a story. We are all telling our own stories.
Very powerful.
And the power of story to change. Like, I wouldn't be who I was without who I am without Doctor Who, without Superman, without any of these stories that I've encountered. Like, I wouldn't be the same. And these characters, Doctor Who and Superman, especially, are two of the biggest characters for me that have. impacted my story. And you find empathy with the doctor. All of us can find empathy with the doctor because the doctor experiences very human things like grief and trauma and sadness and anger and all of these things that we feel. And the doctor can't stand injustice. Most of us can't stand injustice. So we all empathise with the doctor. And that's why those stories keep enduring and why the doctor has such a positive impact on everyone. The show and the community and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. And ultimately being about hope. That
Yes.
it's not
Yes.
just grief, but it's also the doctor calling us to joy and to hope and to love and to keep on persisting in those despite anything that we may face.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. This has been a great show. I've loved doing this. Yeah, thank you I love talking about Doctor Who. It's always good to talk about Doctor Who. So, where can people find your work, Jenna?
Yes, please learn more at invisiblecakesociety.com. So there I have all these resources and poetry and podcast episodes like this one, and just essays written by myself and others about invisible and erased experiences and how we can find community and joy in that.
Wonderful, and it is wonderful. I highly recommend it to everybody. It's brilliant. Jenna as well does incredible work. So thank you for sharing that. And Jenna will probably be back on the podcast at some point. Taylor Swift has a new album out imminently, which means that there will be another podcast about that album, like at some point in the future, probably in the next few months, I suspect. But yes, thanks, Jenna, for coming on. It's always great having you on. We always have great conversations. So thank you, and thanks for listening, everybody.